You think you can just sit here? Brittany sneered, her voice echoing across the cafeteria. Dozens of students turned to look. The new girl didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. Brookside High prided itself on being one of the top academic schools in the district. But what the brochures didn't mention was its unspoken social hierarchy, an invisible web of rules, ranks, and reputations. At the top of that web sat Brittany Langford, the blonde queen bee, whose last name opened more doors than her GPA ever could. Brittany wasn't just popular, she was feared. Her father sat on the school board her mother donated to the arts program, and she walked the hallways like they were built just for her. And today someone had crossed an invisible line. Someone sat at her table. Amara Davis had transferred to Brookside just last week. The new girl. She didn't speak much. She never introduced herself beyond what the teacher made her say. She always wore headphones, kept her head down, and left class the moment the bell rang. Her notebooks were clean, her eyes were sharp, and she radiated something that Brittany couldn't stand: unbothered confidence. That afternoon, the cafeteria buzzed as usual. Lunch trays clattered, laughter bounced off the walls, and gossip flowed like a river. Brittany strode in with her usual entourage, Courtney and Emma, both girls loyal, loud, and endlessly amused by Brittany's cruelty. But their smiles dropped when they saw her, Amara, sitting at the center of their table, alone, calm, eating from a neatly packed lunchbox, quietly scrolling through something on her phone. It was like watching a deer lie down in a lion's den. Brittany stopped mid-step. Oh, hell no. She stormed over, Courtney and Emma trailing. Students nearby paused, sensing drama. Whispers started. That's Brittany's table. Is she crazy? Yo, what's she doing? Brittany leaned forward, planting both palms flat on the table. You think you can just sit here? She repeated, this time slower, each word dripping with menace. Amara looked up. Her eyes, deep brown, almost golden in the light, met Brittany's. She didn't blink, didn't smirk, didn't look away. She just stared, calm, steady, silent. Brittany hated it. I asked you a question, she snapped. Still nothing. Amara simply picked up her chopsticks and took another bite of her lunch. Homemade, balanced. It smelled like soy and sesame. Courtney scoffed. Maybe she doesn't speak English. Emma snorted. Maybe she thinks she's better than us. Brittany knocked the chopsticks from Amara's hands. They clattered to the floor. Did I say you could eat at my table, freak? Amara stared down at the fallen chopsticks, then slowly looked up again, face unreadable. Not angry, not scared, just quiet. That quiet unnerved Brittany more than yelling ever could. Then came the final blow. Brittany grabbed Amara's lunchbox and with a smug grin dumped it onto the floor. Rice scattered across the tiles. A few students gasped. A boy in the corner started to stand, but his friend grabbed his arm. Don't get involved, man. Amara sat still for a moment. Then she reached down, calmly gathered the overturned box and wiped up what she could with a napkin. Her movements were graceful, practiced, precise, like a ritual. The cafeteria was so quiet you could hear the AC humming. Then she stood up. Brittany took a half step back without realizing. I'm only going to say this once, Amara said, her voice low and clear. You have 5 seconds to apologize. Brittany blinked. Excuse me. Amara looked at her watch. 4. Laughter erupted behind Brittany. She's joking, right? Star 3. Courtney rolled her eyes. Is this girl for real? 2. Brittany stepped forward. Or what new girl you gonna? Before she could finish the sentence, Amara moved. Fast. Faster than anyone could process. In one fluid motion, she sidestepped Brittany's stance, spun lightly, and with surgical precision used her leg to sweep Brittany's ankle. The queen bee hit the floor, hard, landing on her side with a loud oof. The cafeteria exploded with shocked gasps. Courtney lunged forward furious, but Amara dodged easily, catching the girl's wrist midair and twisting gently enough to make her squeal without causing damage. Then she let go. Emma backed away instantly, hands raised. Enough, Amara said, her voice not raised but commanding. I warned you. By now a teacher had rushed over. What's going on here? Brittany scrambled to her feet, red-faced, hair askew. She attacked me. Half the cafeteria yelled at once. She didn't. You started it. We saw everything. The teacher looked at Amara. Is that true? Amara just bent down, picked up her chopsticks, and said calmly, you can check the cameras. As she walked past Brittany, she paused. I don't fight because I enjoy it, she whispered. But I've been training since I was 7, and you are not my first bully. Amara didn't speak a word on the walk home. She didn't need to. Her body moved in steady rhythm every step, echoing the balance she had trained into her bones. She passed the tree-lined streets of Brookside, ignoring the stares of a few students who still couldn't stop whispering. The cafeteria incident had already made its rounds: Snapchat stories, whispered group chats, even a blurry video showing Brittany on the ground. But Amara didn't care. The truth was, she didn't come to Brookside to make friends. She came to start over. When she finally reached the small house her mother rented on the edge of town, she stepped inside, dropped her bag quietly by the door, and headed straight to the backyard. There, under a canopy of maple trees, lay her safe place, a 10 by 10 wooden platform built by her late grandfather. It was a dojo of sorts, her sanctuary. She tied her braids into a knot, removed her shoes, stood at the edge of the platform, and bowed. Then she began. Her movements were slow at first, like water, soft-flowing, graceful, then sharper, faster. Her feet pivoted on invisible cues, her fists slicing through the air with precision. Every kick, every strike was deliberate, honed over years of silent practice. Amara had been doing karate since she was 7. Her uncle, a former martial arts champion, had taught her not for glory, not for trophies, but for discipline. Karate is not about hurting people, he'd said once. It's about knowing you can and choosing not to. But Brookside had forced her to choose, and now the world knew. Inside the house, her mom peeked through the kitchen window and watched her daughter's form, proud and aching all at once. She held it in too long, she murmured. The next morning, Amara walked into school with the same calm as always. But this time, the halls parted for her. Students stepped aside. Some stared, some nodded. Others whispered things like, "She's the karate girl," or "Don't mess with her." But the strangest shift came not from the crowd, it came from Brittany. Gone was the cocky smile. Gone were the mocking eyes. Brittany sat in homeroom, silently, arms folded, avoiding Amara's gaze entirely. For the first time, the queen bee had lost her throne. At lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with anticipation. Would there be a rematch? Would Brittany retaliate? Would Amara be expelled? None of that happened. Amara walked to a different table, placed her lunch quietly, and ate in peace. And then something unexpected occurred. A girl approached her table. She was small, with thick glasses and long curly hair. Her name tag read Talia. No entourage, just a tray of food in nervous hands. "Hi," Talia said, voice cracking slightly. Mind if I sit?" Amara looked up, mildly surprised. "Sure." Talia sat, visibly relieved. "I just wanted to say, that was really cool, what you did. Nobody stands up to Brittany, ever." Amara nodded once, saying nothing. Talia continued, warming up. "She made my freshman year hell. She used to stuff my homework into the toilets. Called me Geekzilla. I once skipped class for a week because I couldn't face her." Amara looked at her. "So why are you still here?" Talia smiled shyly. "Because someone finally stood up to her, and maybe that means things can change." That was the first moment Amara realized what her silence had been costing her. By keeping to herself, by staying invisible, she had allowed Brittany's reign to continue. But standing up even once had shifted something larger than she could have imagined. Later that day, the principal called her into the office. She sat in the leather chair, eyes steady, while Principal Thompson, a balding man in his 50s, shuffled papers. "You've caused quite the stir," he began. "I didn't throw the first punch," Amara said calmly. He held up a hand. "I know. We reviewed the footage. In fact, I wanted to thank you for showing restraint. You could have hurt them far more than you did." Amara tilted her head. "You know karate." He chuckled. "Enough to know that what you did was controlled. I've seen plenty of kids lash out. You measured every move." She said nothing. He leaned forward. "We're not punishing you, but I am asking something. Would you consider teaching a self-defense class for the younger girls after school? A few of our freshman students could really use some confidence. I think they'd listen to you." Amara blinked. Teach. Pyehuam. She had never seen herself that way. But maybe there was power in her story. Not in fists, but in standing tall when no one else could. "I'll think about it," she replied. That night, as she trained in the backyard, her mother brought out a glass of water. "School okay today?" she asked. Amara nodded. Her mom smiled. "Your uncle would be proud." Amara stared into the darkening sky. "I didn't want to be noticed." "I know. But now that I am, maybe I can do something with it." Her mother kissed her forehead. "That's my girl." And so the girl who once walked through the halls invisible became the spark that lit something new. The classroom buzzed softly as students whispered behind their hands. Amara could feel their stares, but she ignored them. Mr. Jennings was going over the quadratic formula on the whiteboard, but the tension in the room had nothing to do with algebra. Everyone was waiting for something to happen, a comment, a confrontation, a retaliation from Brittany, but none came. Brittany hadn't shown up to school that morning. Rumor had it she'd stayed home sick, but everyone knew better. Even the teachers seemed aware. They glanced at Amara with a mix of concern and curiosity, as though seeing her for the first time. During group work, a boy named Tyler leaned over. He was tall, wore a varsity jacket, and had barely looked Amara's way until now. "Hey, what you did yesterday? That was wild," he said. Amara didn't respond. "No, I mean it," he added quickly. "Like that girl needed to be put in her place a long time ago." Still silence. He laughed awkwardly. "So, you really do karate?" She finally looked up. "Yes." He blinked. "Black belt." She nodded once. Tyler let out a low whistle. "Remind me never to mess with you." That phrase, "never mess with you," kept echoing in her mind as the day wore on. It was meant to be a compliment, but it also felt like a wall. The truth was, Amara didn't want fear. She wanted respect. After school, she was called back to the principal's office. This time, she found someone else waiting, Ms. Kelly, the guidance counselor. A warm woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Hi, Amara," she greeted gently. "We just wanted to check in after yesterday. I heard Principal Thompson mentioned a self-defense program." Amara nodded cautiously. "We'd like to help you set it up if you're interested," Ms. Kelly continued. "It wouldn't have to be big. Just once a week, maybe a small group to start. A few of the girls have already asked about it." Amara tilted her head. "Which girls?" Ms. Kelly slid a list across the desk. 5 names. Talia was one of them. Another name caught her eye. Jenna, a girl she'd seen cry quietly in the bathroom one morning, wiping makeup over a bruise. "I'll do it," Amara said softly. Ms. Kelly smiled. "You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not," Amara replied. "I just know what it's like to be scared. I don't want them to feel that way anymore." The following Wednesday after school, Amara arrived at the gym. She wore her GI belt, neatly tied hair pulled back tight. Her movements were precise as she rolled out the mats with help from Coach Davis, a PE teacher who'd volunteered to supervise. Then the girls came. First Talia, beaming nervously. Then Jenna, then 3 more, some awkward, some timid, all curious. They sat cross-legged waiting. Amara stood in front of them. For a moment she hesitated. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from being seen. This was different from fighting. This was sharing. "My name is Amara," she began. "I started learning karate when I was 7. My uncle taught me that strength isn't about how hard you hit, it's about how well you control it." She scanned their faces. They were listening. "And I want to teach you how to control yours." Over the next hour, they learned stances, breathing basic strikes. Amara moved through them, gently correcting posture, encouraging each movement. Talia was a natural, full of energy. Jenna struggled with her footing, but smiled more than Amara had ever seen her smile. After class, Coach Davis pulled her aside. "That was incredible," he said. "You have a gift." Amara didn't know what to say. No one had ever called her a teacher before. The next week, there were 10 girls. The week after, 15. Word spread, but so did Brittany. She returned to school eventually, walking quieter than before, her eyes darting from face to face. Her posse had thinned. Even Courtney seemed distant. Whispers followed her instead of adoration. During lunch one day, Amara passed her in the hallway. Brittany flinched slightly as if expecting something, but Amara didn't even look her way. That more than anything stung. What hurt bullies most wasn't defeat, it was being forgotten. After her Thursday class, Amara sat on the bleachers watching the gym empty out. Talia sat beside her, legs swinging. "Hey," Talia said after a moment. "You ever think you'd be a leader?" Amara smirked. "No." "Well, you are, like it or not." There was a pause. Then Amara said, "I used to think being quiet kept me safe. But maybe it just kept me small." Talia nodded. "Not anymore." And with that, a quiet girl who once wanted to disappear had become the force that others turned toward, not out of fear, but strength. Friday morning brought with it a chill in the air, and a strange note slipped into Amara's locker. The handwriting was sharp and familiar. "Don't get too comfortable. Queen bees don't die, they sting. B." Amara folded the note, expression unreadable. She knew Brittany wouldn't let things end quietly. Bullies rarely vanished without a final flare. But what Brittany didn't understand was that this wasn't Amara's first storm, and it wouldn't be her last. As the day unfolded, whispers floated through the halls again. Something was happening. A rumor that Brittany had planned something big, something public. By lunchtime, students were already jockeying for front row seats in the gymnasium, where a special school spirit assembly had been suddenly added to the schedule. Amara sat in her seat calmly, front row with her homeroom class, her expression, steady posture, upright. Talia sat beside her, her hand shaking slightly as she leaned over. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "Yes," Amara replied. Talia glanced at the center of the gym. "Because Brittany's planning something." She got the mic. "I heard her talking to the AV team earlier." Amara looked ahead. "Let her speak." At the far end of the gym, Brittany stepped onto the stage in front of the microphone. She wore a polished smile, hair flawless, like the incident had never happened. Her voice echoed through the space, sugary sweet. "Hi everyone, thanks for being here today. As most of you know, I love Brookside and I've always believed in unity and school pride." She paused, eyes scanning the crowd, but sometimes when someone new comes in and causes drama, it divides us instead of bringing us together. Murmurs rippled. "I just think we should all remember who we are and who we don't want to become," she added, smiling wider. Her gaze locked on Amara. Then she said it. "I mean, this is Brookside, not a dojo." Gasps. The gym fell silent. Amara stood. The room shifted. Even the teacher seemed frozen. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush. She walked calmly to the steps of the stage. For a moment, it felt like the entire school held its breath. Then she climbed up. Principal Thompson moved to stop her, but Coach Davis gently touched his arm. "Let her." Amara stood beside Brittany, facing the crowd. She took the mic. "I wasn't going to say anything," she began, voice clear, calm. "But then I remembered why I'm here." She turned to Brittany. "You think I came here to fight you? But I didn't." She faced the crowd again. "I came here to learn, to be invisible, to get through the year without anyone knowing my name. But that's not what happened, and I'm glad." She paused, "because now I know how many people were waiting for someone to stand up." She pointed toward the bleachers where her self-defense students sat watching. They didn't come to fight either. They came to learn how not to be afraid. Brittany scoffed. "Oh, please." Amara turned sharply. "You had your turn. This is mine." Brittany flinched. The crowd murmured again. Amara continued, her voice unwavering. "I used to think strength meant silence, but now I know silence helps bullies. Strength is speaking, standing, teaching, leading." She handed the mic to the principal and stepped down, walking back to her seat. Every eye followed her. A beat of silence hung then, clapping. Scattered at first, then louder. Then the whole gym roared. Brittany stood frozen on stage, outshined, outvoiced, undone. Later that day, Amara received a note from the district superintendent inviting her to speak at the upcoming Regional Youth Leadership Summit. They had seen the video. It was already making rounds on social media, titled, "The Girl Who Silenced a Bully with Grace." She sat on the edge of her bed that night, staring at the email on her phone, and felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was leading. Amara remembered the first time she sat alone. It was third grade, a new school in a new state, and she had just moved in with her uncle after her father's death. Her mother worked long hours at the hospital, and Amara was often left with a lunchbox, a notebook, and silence. She didn't mind it at first. Silence had always been kinder than people. But kids noticed when someone didn't fit, especially when that someone had dark skin, braided hair, and didn't speak unless asked. On her second day, she sat at a table with 4 other children, tray neatly balanced, back straight. They laughed, shoved, and passed ketchup packets like toys. Amara simply opened her lunch and ate. One of the boys looked at her food and made a face. "You, what is that? Looks like worms." The others laughed. A girl whispered, "She's so weird," while pretending not to be overheard. Amara didn't look up. The next day, she sat at an empty table. No one joined her, and she didn't ask. Day after day, the same pattern played out. One boy began tossing grapes in her direction. The girl beside him mimicked her hairstyle in exaggerated mockery, tying paper clips into her own hair. The cafeteria aides turned blind eyes. The teacher said Amara should try being friendlier. By the end of that month, Amara had stopped eating at school. She tucked her lunch into her backpack and said she wasn't hungry. Her uncle noticed the untouched boxes at home but said nothing. He simply pulled the heavy black punching pad out of the closet one night and held it steady. "You don't need to speak when you hit," he said. "Let your strength talk for you." Amara punched once. It stung. She blinked back tears. He nodded. Again. That night began a new rhythm in her life. Mornings for school, afternoons for silence, and evenings for discipline. Each strike brought a breath. each breath a small piece of herself stitched back together. By the end of fourth grade, Amara had moved up 2 belt levels. By fifth, she had begun tournaments. She didn't smile on the mat. She didn't wave. She bowed. She fought. She won. But outside of the ring, the world was still cruel. In middle school, the bullying turned subtle. Whispers in the hall, social exclusion, group projects where she was assigned all the work but excluded from the presentation. She learned to bury everything, learned to stay quiet, learned not to cry. Until one day a girl tripped her on the staircase. Amara didn't fall. She turned eyes steady. "You think you're better than us?" the girl sneered. Amara said nothing. Later that evening, she asked her uncle, "What if I never hit back?" He looked at her. "Then make them wish you had." She didn't understand what he meant at the time. But years later, standing on the stage at Brookside, she finally did. The real fight was never with fists. It was surviving the silence. It was walking back into a room full of laughter day after day, knowing none of it was for you. It was hearing your name in a cruel whisper and choosing to lift your head anyway. Now at 16, those memories felt both distant and a live ghost folded into her muscle memory. They came back in flashes, the taste of untouched apples, the ache in her shoulders after training the long walks home, with silence as her only companion. She thought she had buried them. But strength, real strength, comes from facing what you buried. After the school assembly, Amara sat alone in the courtyard. Sunlight draped over the benches. Talia had gone to class, and the breeze carried soft rustling from the trees above. She closed her eyes and saw her 9-year-old self sitting in the lunchroom, surrounded by mocking laughter. She opened them again and exhaled. She wasn't that girl anymore, and she would never be again. Amara was just finishing her sandwich when she heard the voice. "Didn't think I'd find you here." She froze. She hadn't heard that voice in over 2 years, but its tone still carried the same edge, soft, cautious, almost apologetic. She slowly turned around. Standing just a few feet behind her backpack slung over one shoulder was Malik. He looked taller, leaner, his face more angular than the boy she remembered. But his eyes, hazel serious and familiar, were unmistakably the same. Her stomach tightened. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice lower than usual. "I just transferred," he replied. "My mom got a new job in town. Brookside was the only school that had space mid-semester." She stared at him, unsure whether to believe in fate or curse it. Malik wasn't just any old acquaintance. He was the only person from her old school who had ever gotten close, the only one who had ever seen behind the armor, and the only one who'd let her down when she needed him most. "I didn't know you were here," he added quickly. "I swear." Amara gave a tight nod, more to herself than him. "Doesn't matter." There was a pause. Malik stepped closer. "Look, Amara, I know I messed up. Back then, I should have said something. Should have stood up for you when they started." "You didn't," she interrupted. Her voice wasn't angry, just resolved. "I know," his eyes dropped, "and I hated myself for it." She looked away, scanning the distant parking lot, the late afternoon sun casting shadows across the concrete. Malik sat on the bench across from her, careful not to get too close. "It's different now," he said. "I'm different." "Are you?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "When they locked your locker with zip ties and someone poured paint in your gym bag, I laughed with them. At first, because I thought that's how I'd fit in. I thought if I didn't join in, they'd turn on me too. And they probably would have." He paused, then looked her in the eyes. "But what I didn't realize until it was too late is that I'd already lost something way more important." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes flickered. "You were the first person who talked to me when I transferred," he said. "I was scared, remember? First day, new city, new school. Everyone looked at me like I didn't belong." Amara remembered. She had seen it in his eyes, the same tight-lipped quiet she wore. So she sat next to him at lunch and offered half her sandwich. "No words, just presence. You didn't need to speak to say you cared," he said. "And that's why it hurt so much when he turned away." "I started learning karate the year after you left," Malik said quietly. "Joined the community center dojo. It helped. I still suck compared to you." He chuckled lightly, "But I needed something to help me feel like I wasn't just hiding all the time." She glanced at him, then the faintest trace of curiosity breaking through her guarded stare. "I told myself that if I ever saw you again, I'd say something," he added. "Not for me, for you." Amara studied him in silence. She didn't know if she was ready to forgive, but she wasn't angry anymore either. Not in the way she used to be. She had changed too. Grown. Her strength wasn't about holding grudges. It was about choosing which weights were worth carrying. You said you're different now, she finally said. Prove it. Malik blinked. How? You like karate, joined the self-defense group. Fridays after school, no skipping. He smiled. Really? She raised an eyebrow. You want a second chance, earn it. Malik nodded, the weight in his chest lifting slightly. Deal. He stood adjusting his backpack but paused before walking away. And Amara, she looked up. I meant what I said. I'm sorry. She didn't reply. But as he turned and walked off, a small breath left her lips a release. A thread once knotted had finally begun to unravel. That night, Amara stood in her backyard dojo again, the cool air brushing her skin. She moved through her kata, slowly mind replaying the conversation. She still didn't know what Malik's return meant. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. But in that moment, her balance felt steadier, her stance stronger, and her heart, though still wary, had opened a single inch. Friday came fast. By the time the final bell rang, Amara was already in the gym, rolling out the mats with practiced hands. She always arrived early, 10 minutes of silence before the others came in, gave her space to center herself. Today, however, her calm was interrupted by a shuffle of footsteps earlier than expected. She looked up and froze for a split second. Malik stood in the doorway, wearing a plain white gi, slightly wrinkled but tied correctly. His backpack hung off one shoulder, and he looked nervous as their eyes met. She gave a small nod. You're early. Didn't want to be late, he replied, adjusting the belt with shaking fingers. She turned back to the mats. Good, warm up. As the rest of the students filtered in, Talia, Geneva, and the others, they gave Malik curious glances. Some whispered. A few of them recognized him from lunch or the hallway, but none questioned it aloud. Amara clapped once to begin. Line up. The students stood in rows. Amara moved to the front, facing them with the same calm command she always carried. Today, she said, we're going to work on what it means to control power, not just show it. When someone threatens you, your response isn't always to fight. Sometimes it's to stand your ground without a single punch. She turned, Malik front and center. He stepped forward. I'm going to push you. Your job is not to hit me. Your job is to stay balanced, stay calm, think before you act. He nodded. Amara took a stance. Slowly, methodically, she stepped into his space, tapping his shoulder. Malik swayed but held. She tapped again, this time harder. He stepped back. Too soon, she said quietly. Try again. They reset. This time she moved faster, more pressure, less space. Malik gritted his teeth but didn't swing. He stayed rooted. Not perfect, but steady. Good, she said. Then a voice from the bleachers broke the focus. Well, look who's playing sensei. Amara turned. Leaning casually against the far wall, arms crossed, was Brittany. Every head turned. The tension spiked instantly. Some of the girls exchanged glances. Talia whispered, What is she doing here? Amara didn't flinch. You're not in this class. Brittany pushed off the wall. I'm observing. Freedom of movement, right? Amara didn't respond. Brittany circled slowly like a lioness in a cage. You know it's funny. 1 minute everyone's scared of you. The next you're giving lessons like you're some kind of hero. Amara stepped forward, still calm. If you have something to say it. Otherwise, leave. Brittany smirked. Oh, I'm just waiting. Sooner or later, they'll see through you. They already have Talia called out, standing up. You're the only one who hasn't changed. The room went quiet. Brittany's eyes narrowed. You think you're special now, just because you kicked someone once and got it on video. Amara stepped forward. Her tone was still steady but firm. I don't need to be special. I just need to be better than I was yesterday. Can you say the same? The words landed like a stone dropped in still water. Brittany stared for a long moment, then turned and left. The room exhaled. Malik looked at Amara wide-eyed. You really didn't flinch? She's just noise, Amara said. And noise only matters if you let it inside. They resumed training, but the energy had shifted. Later that evening, Coach Davis stopped by as students packed up. She's still trying to rattle you, huh? He said, gesturing to the door Brittany had disappeared through. Amara nodded. She's trying to prove I haven't changed anything. He chuckled. The fact that she showed up means you have. As the gym emptied, Malik hung back. You were incredible, he said. Back there, with her. Amara gave a small smile. You did well, too. He looked surprised. I thought I was shaky. You were, she said. But you didn't break. Malik grinned. I'll take it. They walked toward the exit together, silence folding between them like a comfortable blanket. The hallway was quiet, lockers humming under dim fluorescent light. Amara, he said suddenly, do you ever think you were meant to come here, to this school, I mean? She paused, then looked at him. I used to think I came here to disappear, she said softly. But maybe I came here to be seen. And this time it didn't scare her. The hallway was unusually quiet for a Monday morning, too quiet. Amara noticed it the moment she stepped past the main office. Students parted in the halls again, but not with awe like before. This time it was hesitation, pity. Something was off. Talia met her at her locker, holding her phone tightly to her chest. "You haven't seen it yet," she whispered, eyes wide. "Seen what?" Talia bit her lip. "There's a video. Someone posted it this morning." Brittany. Amara froze. "What kind of video?" Talia slowly turned her phone around. On screen, grainy footage played a clip from a week ago during the self-defense class. It had been edited, chopped, warped. Every part that showed Amara in control had been cut. What remained were exaggerated moments: Amara pushing Malik off balance during a drill, her stern expression zoomed in the audio, distorted with captions like aggressive, unstable, and threat to students. Over the video, Brittany's voice narrated, sarcastic and venomous. "Is this what we want in our schools? Violence disguised as leadership? A girl who attacks her classmates and calls it empowerment? Brookside deserves better." Amara felt her stomach twist. Talia turned the screen away, angry. "It already has over 10,000 views," she said. Brittany posted it at 6 a.m. "It's all over Snap, TikTok, everywhere. People are sharing it without context." Amara didn't speak. Her jaw tightened. "She even tagged the principal," Talia added, "and the school board." The words hung in the air. By third period, the damage had spread. A few students who once cheered for her now kept their heads down. One girl in the bathroom whispered, "I thought she was cool, but now," and trailed off when she saw Amara enter. Others just stared. Even Jenna, one of the self-defense students, avoided eye contact. Only Malik stood firm. He found Amara at lunch and sat across from her, eyes steady. "I saw it too," he said, "and I'm not buying any of it." She exhaled, quietly grateful. "It won't matter." Brittany knew what she was doing. Malik shook his head. "She's not winning this. Not again. People believe what they want to believe." He leaned forward. "Then remind them who you really are." After school, Amara found Brittany leaning against her locker, like she owned the whole hallway. "Enjoying your 15 minutes, Brittany said casually, examining her nails. "You filmed that without permission," Amara replied. "You edited it to look like something it's not. Freedom of expression?" Brittany smiled. "Besides, I'm just showing people what they already suspected." "You're scared," Amara said quietly. Brittany blinked. "Excuse me." "You're scared because for once, no one's laughing with you anymore. So you're trying to twist the story." Brittany's smirk faltered. "Here's the thing," Amara continued. "You can't delete the truth. It always finds a way to resurface." The hallway grew still. A few students had stopped to watch from a distance. Brittany's tone sharpened. "You think you're untouchable because you threw a few punches? You're just a trend, and trends fade." Amara stepped forward close enough that Brittany had to tilt her chin up slightly to meet her gaze. "I'm not a trend," she said. "I'm a lesson." And she walked away. But as Amara rounded the corner, her stomach flipped. That night, she knew what she had to do. Not react, respond. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop. With shaking hands, she recorded a simple video. No edits, no music, just her. "I want to tell you the truth," she began. "Not because I need to defend myself, but because you deserve to know what strength really looks like." She spoke softly with honesty and calm. She talked about her childhood, the bullying, the silence, about finding karate, about learning that real power isn't in the punch, it's in the restraint. And she explained what Brittany had done. Calmly, clearly. "I didn't come here to fight," she said. "I came here to find peace, to teach others how to protect themselves. And if that scares people, maybe they were never as strong as they pretended to be." She paused, then finished. "My name is Amara, and I won't be erased." She clicked post, and she waited. The next morning, her video had 35,000 views. By lunch, it had 120,000. And for the first time since this started, Brittany was nowhere to be seen. Amara walked into school the next morning to a hallway lined with silence, but it wasn't the heavy silence of suspicion. It was something more measured, respectful. A dozen eyes followed her as she moved down the corridor, her expression unreadable, her steps slow but certain. One student nodded as she passed. Another offered a quiet, "Hey, Amara." Not a whisper, not a taunt, just acknowledgement. She didn't smile, not yet, but something in her chest loosened. Her video had reached over 180,000 views overnight. Talia met her at the entrance of homeroom holding a printed email in her hand. "You need to see this," she whispered, eyes wide. Amara took it. The school board had issued an official response to Brittany's video and hers. The Brookside Board of Education has reviewed the recent student-led videos concerning safety and empowerment. While we respect freedom of expression, we condemn manipulation and distortion of context to mislead the student body. We recognize Amara Davis's courage in addressing a difficult issue with clarity and composure. We are exploring the introduction of a formal student leadership and self-defense program in collaboration with Amara Davis and Brookside faculty. Amara read the words twice. They want you to lead, Talia said. Not just teach, lead. The school board didn't just defend her, they acknowledged her. And with it, they shut down Brittany's smear campaign in a way no confrontation ever could. At lunch, Amara sat at her usual table. But now it wasn't empty. Malik sat across from her, and two new students joined, quiet but curious. One of them, Sarah, a freshman with short hair and nervous eyes, asked if the self-defense group was open to beginners. Of course, Amara said. Coach Davis stopped by her table halfway through the period, a folded permission slip in hand. This is for the pilot leadership program. The district wants to launch it next month. If you say yes, you'll be mentoring students from other schools too. Amara raised an eyebrow. That's big. He smiled. You're already doing the work. This just gives it a name. As the lunchroom buzzed, Brittany entered. Alone, no entourage. Her eyes scanned the cafeteria and locked on Amara. For the first time, Amara didn't look away. She didn't challenge. She didn't gloat. She simply met Brittany's eyes with a steady gaze, then turned back to her group. That quiet dismissal said more than any argument ever could. Later that afternoon during gym, Amara was called to the principal's office. Principal Thompson stood waiting, a folder in hand and a thoughtful look on his face. Amara, he said, gesturing for her to sit. I wanted to speak with you personally. She nodded, wary but calm. First, I want to apologize, he said. We should have done more. I should have done more when things escalated. But you've handled this entire situation with more poise than many adults I know. He placed the folder in front of her. This is a proposed structure for a district-wide initiative. You'd be the first student representative on the Youth Leadership Advisory Board. It would involve speaking engagements, mentoring younger students, and helping schools develop safe culture programs. Amara flipped open the folder slowly. Her name was at the top of the draft. This is a lot, she said honestly. It is, he replied, but you're the reason it exists. She looked up. You really think I can do this? I think you already are. That night, Amara sat at her desk, staring at her reflection in the dark screen of her laptop. It didn't feel real. Just a few weeks ago, she was the quiet girl trying not to be seen. Now the school board was quoting her. Students were learning from her. Her silence had become something powerful, her pain something useful. And yet, she still felt like that little girl sometimes, the one sitting alone in the lunchroom with kids pointing and laughing. But that little girl had stood up, again and again, and now she was leading. She pulled out a blank sheet of paper. At the top, she wrote in block letters, leadership isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the one who stands still when others run. Underneath, she began outlining her first workshop. The conference room was packed. Rows of students from neighboring schools filled the chairs, murmuring to each other in anticipation. Some scrolled through their phones. Others eyed the large screen at the front of the room. The title slide read, Youth Leadership Summit, Building Power with Purpose. Amara stood behind the podium, fingers curled lightly around the edges, heart pounding not from fear, but something deeper. Readiness. This was her first time speaking to a crowd this big. And not just students. Teachers, counselors, even a school board member or two had shown up. She adjusted the mic and took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was steady. Good morning, she began. When I walked into Brookside High a few months ago, I didn't plan to stand here. I planned to keep my head down, be invisible. It felt safer. She paused, letting that land. But then I realized silence doesn't protect you. It just keeps you small. Dozens of eyes locked onto her. Some leaned forward. So I'm here to talk about leadership. Not because I've always had it, but because I had to learn what it really means. Behind her, the slide changed. The words read, leadership isn't about being in front. It's about being the first to stand when no one else will. Amara told them the story briefly but honestly of what happened in the cafeteria and how she responded. She didn't name names. She didn't shame anyone. She focused on the lesson. Strength is not how loud you are when people are watching. It's how you act when no one thinks you're strong at all. There was silence when she finished, then a slow clap, then more. And finally, the room erupted. As she stepped away from the podium, a line began forming, students waiting to talk to her. Some with questions, others just wanting to say thanks. She was halfway through a conversation with a girl from Northview Middle when a voice behind her made her spine stiffen. Impressive. She turned. Brittany stood there, but not the same Brittany. Her makeup was lighter. Her expression was softer, still proud, but not smug. Her voice had no bite. I wasn't expecting to see you here, Amara said evenly. Brittany shrugged. I wasn't expecting to come. Why did you? There was a beat. Then because I needed to know if all that talk about change was real or just hype. Amara looked her in the eye. And I was wrong, Brittany said. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. You said silence keeps people small, she added. You weren't wrong. Amara didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Brittany looked around the room. Seems like you're not invisible anymore. No, Amara agreed, and I don't want to be. Before Brittany could say anything else, a teacher called her name from across the room. She hesitated, then nodded toward Amara. Good job today, and walked away. Malik joined her a few moments later carrying 2 cups of water. She really showed up. Amara nodded. She listened too. He raised a brow. That's a first. She's trying. Malik smirked. People change. Amara turned toward the crowd again. If they want to. Later that day, as the summit ended, one of the board members approached Amara with a small folder. We're drafting a statewide youth mentorship initiative, he said. Would you be willing to help design the curriculum? Amara blinked. I'm 16. He smiled. Exactly. She took the folder and realized this was no longer about Brookside. This was about something bigger. That night in her room, she pulled out a blank sheet of paper and wrote 2 words at the top. Day 1. Because for the first time in her life, it didn't feel like she was rebuilding from something broken. It felt like she was building something new. The moment Amara stepped through the doors of Crestwood Elementary, the scent of old wood floors and pencil shavings rushed over her like a wave. It had been years, but nothing had changed. The same green tiles, the same faded murals. Even the receptionist gave her a warm nod, just like the one from back then. The school counselor met her by the library and walked her down the main hallway. We're so grateful you could come today, she said. Our 5th graders have been talking about your video nonstop. You've become quite the hero around here. Amara smiled modestly. I'm just here to talk. The classroom was already buzzing when she arrived. Kids sat in clusters, their desks pushed together. At the front of the room stood Ms. Hill, a young teacher with big glasses and an even bigger smile. Class, she said, her voice bright, this is Amara Davis. She's a high school student and community leader, and today she's going to share something really special with us. The students clapped, some more enthusiastic than others. Amara scanned their faces, wide-eyed, curious, a few shy, and then she saw her. A girl in the 2nd row, braids tied neatly, arms folded over a half-open math book. She wasn't clapping, just watching, closely, carefully. Her expression was cautious, not hostile, but guarded, familiar. Amara had been that girl once. She took a breath and stepped forward. Hi everyone, she began. When I was your age, I went to a school just like this. I used to sit in classrooms just like this one. I used to eat lunch alone, just down the hall. A few students tilted their heads, some whispered. And back then I didn't think I'd ever be someone people would want to hear speak. I didn't think I was brave. I didn't even think I mattered that much. She looked at the girl with the braids. But someone reminded me that silence doesn't mean weakness, and that being different, quiet, serious, or strong in ways others don't understand can actually be a gift. One student raised a hand. Were you really in a fight with a bully? Amara chuckled. Let's just say I stood up for myself. But you do karate, right? Another asked. So you can beat up anyone? No, Amara said, smiling. Karate isn't about beating people up. It's about control and knowing when not to fight. They nodded, absorbing her words. Another girl raised her hand. Did anyone ever make fun of you? Yes, Amara answered. A lot. Because I didn't laugh at their jokes. Because I didn't try to be popular. Because I didn't hide who I was. She paused, then looked around the room. But I learned something. What people say about you doesn't define you. What you do does. The girl in the 2nd row slowly sat up straighter. Her eyes stayed locked on Amara's. Do you ever get scared? Someone asked from the back. Amara nodded. All the time, even now. But being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you show up anyway. There was a beat of silence, then a quiet voice. The girl with the braids. My name's Janelle, she said. And I don't talk much either. People say I'm weird. Amara knelt beside her desk, speaking softly. That just means they don't understand your language yet. Janelle blinked. You speak with your eyes and your mind and how you carry yourself, Amara said. That's a kind of power not everyone knows how to see. Janelle looked down, but her shoulders rose just slightly. Afterward, Ms. Hill let the students surround Amara with questions. Some wanted to know if she'd ever been on TV. Others wanted to join her self-defense group when they were old enough. She gave each of them her full attention. But before she left, she knelt one last time beside Janelle and handed her a small card. On it were 3 words in bold handwriting, "You belong here." "I used to need this," Amara whispered. "Now I want you to have it." Janelle nodded slowly, and just before Amara stood, the girl leaned forward and hugged her. No words, just warmth. Back in the car, Amara sat for a long time before starting the engine. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, her eyes glassy. For the first time, she understood what all of this had been for not the videos, not the stage, not the recognition, but for Janelle, for every version of herself still walking hallways alone. The Brookside Auditorium was filled to capacity, rows of students, teachers, and even parents spilling into the aisles. The blue curtain backdrop framed the podium where Amara now stood wearing a gray sweatshirt with the school name arched across the front. The letters felt heavier than usual, not in burden, but in meaning. This wasn't just another speech. This was the final moment of the Youth Leadership Week, and they had asked her to close it. As she stepped up to the microphone, she took a quiet breath. Her eyes scanned the crowd. Talia in the front row, beaming. Malik off to the side, arms crossed with a proud smirk. Coach Davis in the back giving her a firm nod. Even Principal Thompson had taken a seat center stage. She began. 6 months ago, I walked into Brookside not wanting to be seen. I thought I'd make it through by blending in, no ripples, no noise, just get through the year. A few knowing chuckles rippled through the students. But the truth is, silence doesn't protect you. It just delays the moment you have to rise. She paused. You already know what happened next. Some of you witnessed it. Some of you whispered about it. Some of you believed the wrong story before the right one found its voice. Her gaze swept over the audience. This was no longer about punishment. This was power. But I'm not standing here because I fought back. I'm standing here because I decided who I wanted to be, and then I showed up as her every day. She turned slightly toward the freshman section. To the students who feel invisible, who feel too different, too quiet, too not enough. I see you. Her voice deepened slightly. To those who've made mistakes like I have, like we all have, what matters most is what you do next. Then her eyes found Brittany, sitting halfway back, arms crossed, not in defiance but reflection. Brittany didn't look angry. She looked like someone learning how to be quiet for the right reasons. I used to think being strong meant being silent. Now I know it means speaking clearly even when your voice shakes. There was no need for applause, just attention, and she had all of it. Amara reached into her pocket and unfolded a small note, the same one she'd written weeks ago, the night she posted her first video. Leadership isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the one who stands still when everyone else runs. I wrote that when I didn't know what would come next. Now I know. What comes next is us. She folded the note and stepped back. For a moment, the auditorium was still. Then someone stood, clapping. Then 2 more. Then the entire room. Not loud, not chaotic. Just steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Amara didn't cry. She didn't smile wide. She just stood there, rooted, seen. When she stepped off the stage, Talia ran up and grabbed her arm. You did it. No, Amara said softly. We did. Outside the auditorium, the late afternoon sun washed the steps in soft gold. Malik joined her at the bottom, holding 2 cold drinks from the vending machine. He handed her one. So what now, Miss District Mentor and National Speaker? She looked up at the sky, the clouds drifting like thoughts not yet spoken. Now, she said, now we get to work. Because change wasn't a moment, it was a movement. And Amara Davis was just getting started.